I'm an only child, and growing up, I lived in a typical suburban home with my parents. It was a cozy, one-story house in a quiet neighborhood where everyone knew each other. Our house had a simple layout. The living room connected to the kitchen, with a glass sliding door that led to our backyard. From the couch in the living room, you could see straight through to that glass door, which always gave me a comforting view of our well-lit backyard at night. One evening, my parents and I were settled on the couch, enjoying our usual family TV time. The soft glow of the television illuminated the room, casting a warm light over our familiar surroundings. We laughed and chatted during commercial breaks, the sound of the TV blending with our voices to create a comforting hum that filled the room. It was an ordinary night, the kind where you feel safe and content, wrapped up in the presence of family and the familiarity of home. As we sat there, completely absorbed in our show, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The house was quiet except for the TV and the occasional sound of the wind rustling the leaves outside. It was one of those peaceful nights where you wouldn't expect anything to go wrong. Little did we know that sense of security was about to be shattered in an instant. As we were immersed in our show, an unexpected noise cut through the comfortable hum of the TV. It was a faint clinking sound, almost as if someone was jiggling a lock. My heart skipped a beat, and I noticed my parents tense up beside me. We all turned our heads towards the kitchen, the source of the noise. There, through the glass sliding door, I saw him. A man dressed entirely in black, with a ski mask covering most of his face, was reaching for the handle of the door. The dim light from the backyard cast an eerie shadow on him, making the scene even more surreal and terrifying. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. My mind raced, trying to process what I was seeing. Fear gripped me like a vice, paralyzing me. I could hear my mother gasp, and my father quickly rose from the couch, his movements tense and deliberate. The man saw my father stand and, in an instant, turned and bolted, disappearing into the darkness beyond our backyard. The whole encounter lasted only a few seconds, but it felt like an eternity. The fear and shock of seeing a masked intruder at our door was overwhelming. My father rushed to the door, locking it firmly and checking to make sure it was secure. My mother and I sat there, stunned and shaken. The sense of safety we had felt just moments before had been shattered, replaced by a chilling realization that we had come dangerously close to a nightmare. My father sprang into action the moment he saw the intruder. He stood up abruptly, his face a mix of anger and determination. Without hesitation, he moved towards the sliding door, ready to confront whoever was trying to break into our home. His sudden movement caught the intruder's attention. As soon as the masked man saw my father approaching, he froze for a split second before turning on his heels and sprinting away. I watched, still in shock, as he disappeared into the darkness of our backyard. The fence rattled briefly, and then there was silence. My heart was pounding, and I could barely breathe, still processing what had just happened. My father didn't waste a moment. He locked the sliding door with trembling hands, ensuring it was secure, and then quickly moved through the house, checking all the windows and doors. He double-checked the locks, making sure there was no other way for the intruder to get in. My mother and I followed him, staying close, our eyes wide with fear and adrenaline. He went outside, flashlight in hand, to scan the yard and the perimeter of the house. Every creak and rustle made my heart race, but my father remained vigilant, searching for any sign that the intruder might still be nearby. After a thorough inspection, he came back inside, locking the door behind him. "He's gone," he said, trying to sound reassuring, but I could see the worry in his eyes. We sat together in the living room, still shaken. My father called the police to report the incident, and we waited anxiously for them to arrive. The sense of security we once felt in our home had been shattered, replaced by a deep, lingering fear. In the immediate aftermath of the incident, a whirlwind of emotions surged through me. The intense fear I had felt when I saw the masked intruder was still fresh in my mind, but alongside it was an overwhelming sense of relief. I couldn't stop thinking about how grateful I was not to have been alone at that moment. My parents' presence provided a semblance of safety and comfort amidst the terror. As the police arrived and took our statements, my father discussed the details with them, while my mother and I sat close together, seeking reassurance in each other's company. The officers inspected the property, confirming that the intruder had likely fled over the fence. They promised to patrol the area more frequently and advised us on improving our home security. That night, sleep was elusive. We stayed together in the living room, too afraid to return to our beds. My father immediately started talking about ways to make our home more secure. Over the next few days, we installed new locks on all the doors and windows, added motion sensor lights around the house, and even set up a security camera near the sliding door. Despite these measures, the lingering anxiety was hard to shake. Every noise in the house seemed amplified, every shadow more sinister. I found myself constantly checking the locks, peeking out of the windows, and jumping at the slightest sound. The sense of safety and security that I once took for granted in our home had been deeply undermined. The psychological impact was profound. Even as the days turned into weeks, the memory of that night haunted me. I couldn't sit in the living room without glancing nervously at the sliding door. Nighttime, which used to be a peaceful part of my day, became a period of heightened anxiety and vigilance. My parents, too, were affected. My father was more protective than ever, always ensuring everything was locked up tight before bed. My mother often checked on me, sensing the unease that lingered in our home. We all tried to return to our normal routines, but the shadow of that night loomed over us, a constant reminder how quickly our sense of security had been shattered. Even now, I can't help but feel a chill whenever I recall the masked figure at our door, a stark reminder of how fragile our sense of safety truly is. In the weeks and months following the incident, one thing became abundantly clear to me. I was incredibly grateful for my parents' presence that night. The thought of facing that masked intruder alone was unbearable. Their quick actions and steady presence provided a shield against the terror that had invaded our home. I often found myself reflecting on how different things could have been if they hadn't been there, and a shiver would run down my spine. The event profoundly changed my perception of safety and what it meant to feel secure in my own home. The suburban tranquility that once felt so reliable now seemed fragile and easily disrupted. Locks and security systems we installed brought some comfort, but the psychological impact lingered. I realized that safety isn't just about physical barriers. It's also about the mental peace that comes with feeling secure in your surroundings. I began to understand that no matter how many precautions we take, there's always an element of vulnerability that we can't entirely eliminate. The feeling of invincibility that comes with youth was replaced by a more cautious and vigilant mindset. I learned to appreciate the little things we often take for granted, like the safety of having loved ones close by and the peace of mind that comes from being prepared for the unexpected. Even as life slowly returned to normal, the fear left a lasting mark. Every now and then, when the house was particularly quiet, I would replay the events of that night in my mind. I'd imagine the alternate scenarios, each more chilling than the last. What if my parents hadn't been home? What if the intruder had been more determined? These thoughts were like shadows, always lurking at the edge of my consciousness, constant reminder of how quickly a sense of security can be shattered. Ultimately, that night taught me a valuable lesson about vigilance and the importance of family. It reminded me that while we can't control every aspect of our safety, we can take steps to protect ourselves and those we love. And it reinforced the simple truth that having someone to rely on during moments of fear is a gift beyond measure. To this day, the memory of that masked figure at our door is a chilling reminder of our vulnerability. It's a dark cloud that occasionally drifts into my thoughts, bringing with it a cold shiver and a renewed appreciation for the safety nets we build around us. And while the fear has faded, the lesson remains. The line between safety and danger is often thinner than we think, and sometimes the difference is simply having someone by your side.